VelociCoaster, El Toro, Millennium Force, Kingda Ka. We know Intamin as the manufacturer of some of the world's biggest and best roller coasters. If you're looking to smash records and produce a coaster that will leave jaws on the floor, the Swiss manufacturer is your best bet. But what if I told you there was a one-of-a-kind Intamin roller coaster left rotting somewhere in the middle of South America? Welcome to another episode of Crazy Coasters. Let's talk about Vertigorama, one of the first ever roller coasters from Intamin. Welcome to another episode of Crazy Coasters, where I talk about some of the strangest and most fascinating roller coasters from around the world that you might not have heard of. To understand what's so fascinating about this roller coaster, we need to look at the history of Argentina. Argentina was ruled by several military dictatorships throughout the course of its post-independence history, the most recent being the National Reorganization process, which was in power from 1976 to 1983. They seized power in a coup against the previous president, Isabel Perón, in March 1976, during a time of growing economic and political instability. Often simply known as El Proceso, the military junta suspended Congress and democracy, banned political parties, limited civil rights, and introduced free market and deregulation policies, appointing military leaders to high positions and persecuting leftists and Peronists in the country. Wow, what a cool intro to a roller coaster documentary. Very fun, very lighthearted. Anyway, one of the military leaders appointed to a high position was Osvaldo Cacciatore, a former Air Force brigadier who became mayor of Buenos Aires. One of his major actions as mayor was to attempt to revitalize the dilapidated ward of Via Soldati, which was an impoverished part of the capital city. One of his plans to help with this was to build a large theme park that would become a major tourist attraction for Buenos Aires. He planned the Parque de la Ciudad, or City Park, awarding the bid to construct the park to a company called Interama Parks, which was actually just a shell company owned by the military so that they could get the contract money for constructing the park. At the time, the park was to be named Parque Interama. Very modest of them. Interama contracted Swiss manufacturer Intamin to import attractions for this new park, and construction began in late 1978 on a plot of land that was formerly slums, a landfill, and farmland. They even contracted Richard Battaglia from Walt Disney World to help plan the park. One of the key attractions that was constructed was the Torre Espacial, an observation tower that became the tallest freestanding structure in Argentina. Intamin constructed the tower at a cost of $728,000. And a few years after the tower's opening in 1982, the park constructed Vertigorama, a brand new roller coaster designed by Giovanola and constructed by Intamin at a cost of over $10 million. The first of Intamin's new double roller coaster model, Vertigorama featured side-by-side tracks that would race each other through the layout, which resembles a Japanese jet coaster. This was actually one of Intamin's first roller coasters. Since starting construction on the park in Argentina, Intamin had been contracted to build American Eagle at Six Flags Great America, their first full-scale coaster, and so Interama requested 3 roller coasters as part of the company's contract with the Swiss manufacturer. That would include a children's coaster called Montaña Rusa Infantil, a small roller coaster which strangely features no cross ties in between each support, and another similar children's coaster called Super Montaña Rusa Infantil.
I'll just do what Superman does. Oh, hey, Carter.
Hello, citizen. Have you seen
Super Montaña Rusa Infantil?
He was just here.
Which featured some fairly cursed-looking transitions. But Vertigorama was to be the park's signature attraction. It was the first full-scale steel coaster that Intamin had ever built, with a large layout of over a kilometre of track featuring airtime hills and plenty of fun racing moments between the two trains. The ride was almost completed in 1983, but never opened to the public. So what happened?
Wait a second, if you'd like to support the channel, there is one really good way that you can do so. Scan this QR code and either buy me a coffee for just, $5, or you can become a channel member. Channel members get exclusive content and access to park merch giveaways and so much more. Big thanks to all the new members from November whose names are now on the bottom of the screen. Become a December member today. Back to the video.
Well, the setbacks began even before the park had opened. In 1980, the chief stockholder of Interama went bankrupt, causing the park's opening to be delayed. This left Interama with an estimated $100 million in bad debts, prompting the new mayor, Julio Cesar Saguier, to revoke the lease and sue Interama after democracy was returned to Argentina in 1983. This led to the park being renamed Parque de la Ciudad. After finally opening to the public with only some of its planned attractions in operation, the park failed to attract the projected 15 million yearly visitors, reaching only 1.1 million visitors in 1985, which would turn out to be the best year in the park's history. So what about Vertigorama? Nearing completion in 1983, the scandal around Interama and the lack of funds for the park caused construction to cease. The ride was in an almost finished state, even having trains on the tracks ready to be tested, but sat in a frozen state, awaiting its fate. With the military interests of Interama no longer involved in Parque de la Ciudad, the future of the park became unclear. The value of the land was quite strong, and now that public interests were allowed to have a say and potentially bid to construct their own projects there, the new government were hesitant to go ahead with the plans. After sitting dormant for years, another lawsuit was raised in 2000, where it was ruled that the city government had breached its contract by rescinding the lease in 1983, with the court ruling in favor of Interama to a sum of $2 billion. This led to another appeal process by the city, which led to the reversal of the ruling in 2007. By this stage, Parque de la Ciudad had been sitting in its current state, awaiting the results of legal action for 35 years. In 2010, the park was reopened in a different state to celebrate Argentina's bicentennial, including the addition of a cultural center and an art gallery, as well as the replacement of some inoperable rides and new public green space. Dropping in and out of operation over the course of the next decade, it eventually became dedicated green space in 2019, occasionally hosting concerts and art exhibitions. As for Vertigorama, it is still standing. Trains on the completed track, but having never run a full cycle in its lifetime. It was a victim of the corruption of the Argentinian government at a time when the country was plagued by the iron-fisted rule of a military junta. Fascinatingly, Intamin never built another of their double roller coaster model, meaning this coaster, which has now been standing but not operating for 40 years, is the only example of this ride model in the world. You can still see this coaster today and take a walk around the ride's footprint in the beautiful Parque de la Ciudad. It sits in the shadow of the Torre Espacial, which is also still standing. Thank you for watching this video on Vertigorama, a fascinating SBNO relic of a coaster. Please consider liking and subscribing, and I will see you next time.